Hello and welcome to Criminal Justice Ethics. My name is Walter Smith and I'll be your instructor in this course. Over the years I've taught this class many times at the college and university level. And whenever I start this class, it's often the case that I get the same question over and over. So let's just address it here at the beginning. And that question is, why are we here? What is the purpose of taking a criminal justice ethics course? Why does it matter? Is it going to have any impact on how I or anyone else conducts themselves when they're out there in the field? Think about it this way. We all have kind of a sense of what's right and wrong. We all kind of know when we're doing the right thing, when we're doing the wrong thing. We have kind of a sense of what it means to act ethically or to act in a moral way in society. So if we all kind of understand that, then we've all kind of come into this class with a makeup that's going to lead us in one direction or another. If I'm a good person, if I've been brought up right, I've got all the right morals, I understand right and wrong, I'm going to do the right thing when I'm presented in these scenarios. Not because I participated in this class, not because I took a training in a police academy 100 miles away, but because I'm a good person. I was brought up to do the right thing. I was taught to do the right thing. And I'm going to do the right thing because I want to feel good about myself and want to be known as a good person. So before this class, I was going to do the right thing. I took the class. After the class, I'm going to do the right thing. This class really had no bearing, really had nothing to say with how I was going to conduct myself later on. Let's look at the flip side of that coin. If I'm not an ethical person, if I'm not a morally sound person, if I like to lie, cheat, and steal, I'm not going to take this class and go, I just had my aha moment. I loved to lie, cheat, and steal before, but I took this criminal justice ethics class, and it changed my life forever. Oh, I'm never going to be the same again. Every decision I make is going to be perfect. It's going to be ethically sound. Life is going to be beautiful. It doesn't work like that. I was going to make a bad decision, an unethical decision before I took this class. Nothing in this class gave me that aha moment that's going to fundamentally change who I am or how I act. And so when I wind up in those situations, in those scenarios later in my career, I'm going to act in a bad way. You think about it, this is kind of a solid argument in some ways, if you just want to be honest with it. But it's only a good argument on the surface. Studying ethics does so much more than that, as you'll see as we go through this course. And so the farther we delve into ethics, the more you'll see there's holes in this logic. That this class is going to do nothing to change how I decide to act or how I make my decisions. Now, police academies across the country have tried very hard to answer this question because their cadets come in and ask the same question. Basically, you can sum up how they've tried to answer this question into two broad categories. The first one is you should do the right thing because you don't want to be penalized for doing the wrong thing. Look, let's be honest, there's a lot of bad things that can happen to you if you go into your community and you start messing up, acting unethically, and doing the wrong thing. You can be put on suspension, you can be fired, you or your department or both could be found civilly liable. You could have criminal charges brought against you if it's bad enough. There's a lot of bad stuff that can happen to you. So isn't there some value in having a class like this or a training at a police academy or somewhere else that you have to go through that explains to you why you need to act right and what you need to do in any given situation and how you need to go about the decision-making process? Because you and your department want to alleviate those bad things from occurring. The second broad category is we need, as a criminal justice system, and this is the worst kept secret ever, we need a strong community partnership to do our jobs right and to be effective and efficient in administering justice. Let's take a police example just to kind of highlight what I'm talking about. You're a detective. How do you become aware that a crime's occurred? Somebody, probably a victim, maybe somebody else in the community, picks up a phone, contacts the police department, says, hey, a crime has occurred. And that's how you become aware that a crime needs to be investigated. What if that community member didn't trust the police? What if they didn't feel comfortable enough contacting you and letting you know what was going on in the community? The perpetrator would be free to go out and roam and do other crimes. Nobody would be looking for him because nobody would have known he'd done the original crime. You wouldn't be aware of the problems and the crimes that were truly occurring or the frequency that they're occurring in your community. And so your community would be less safe and your ability to protect your community would be greatly diminished. Let's say they do contact you. There's still an important community partnership in that investigative process. Most crimes, even today in the age of forensic science, are solved through traditional police work. Asking questions, following up on leads, somebody heard something, somebody saw something, witness testimony, community members coming forward with information. If those community members don't trust you enough to come forward with that information, then you're going to have a lot harder time prosecuting your case. And you might need those people not just to come and tell you about it, maybe testify in court, do all kinds of things that require a certain level of trust between them and the criminal justice system. That you're going to have their safety and their well-being at heart, and you're going to protect them. If they don't feel like you're going to do that, if they don't feel like you're in it for them and that you're going to be there for them, it's going to be a lot harder to get them to work with you as you try to do your job. Now, those are a couple really good reasons, but I think there's another reason that we should study criminal justice ethics. Another reason that it's important is that in the job, you don't always have a lot of time to make what could be a life or death decision. You might, in a matter of a few seconds, have to decide who lives or dies to protect yourself, other officers, community members, maybe even children on the street. What decision you make in that moment is going to reflect on you and your department for a lifetime. You're going to have a few seconds to make that decision. And in that decision, you're going to be in an environment where adrenaline is rushing, emotions are high, everybody's on ants. And that's the environment and the time frame you have to make a decision about who goes home safely that night and how to best deal with this situation. Now, the people who are going to critique your decision, they're going to have days, weeks, months to analyze and reanalyze the situation, go through every aspect of your decision, and make a decision about whether or not you acted appropriately. A class like this allows you to step aside, and trainings in ethics allow you to step aside, look at the bigger picture, learn how to go through these scenarios in your mind before you're actually put in those situations. Learn how to process information quickly. Learn how to use critical thinking skills very quickly. Learn how to better think through what you're doing in a moment, how to calm things down so that you can make a better decision when you need to in that circumstance. Plus, it's going to make you better able to articulate to someone a day, a week, a month later, when they're asking about why you made the decision you made, you're going to be better able to articulate what your thought process was, how you came to that decision, and why you felt that was the right decision in that moment. We also need trainings like this and classes like this because there is a misconception that the terms knowledge and wisdom mean the same thing. We often use them interchangeably. Truth is, they mean something very different. Knowledge is the accumulation of facts, accumulation of information. It's what you get out of a classroom. It's what you get out of a technical book. Wisdom is the application of that knowledge, of that knowledge over time. So wisdom is applying that knowledge to solve problems. It's working with it. It's using it to do bigger things. This class allows you to learn how to do that how to think quickly, how to think decisively, how to think tactically, how to think critically, all in a moment's notice while calming yourself in the situation so that you can make the best decision possible in that situation and be able to explain your decision later on. Let me give you a scenario that will help illustrate what we're talking about. You are driving a trolley car, and at the end of the track, there's 5 people working away. They got machinery blazing. They're not paying any attention to you. They don't hear you coming. They're just working away. Now, you know if you don't do something pretty quickly, you're going to run into these people and they're going to die. So you go to hit the brakes don't work. You go to hit the horn doesn't work. You can't yell and scream out the window and try to get their attention because the equipment's too loud. They won't hear you. But you know you have to do something, because if you don't, these 5 people are going to die. Now you have a lever beside you and you can pull that lever. And when you pull that lever, a side track opens up. And you can just pull the trolley car onto that side track. The problem is on that side track is another individual sleeping. Now you can't get his attention either because he's there with the noise of the other workers and their machinery. And so what do you do? Now if in a real classroom, what we usually do is have a discussion as a class and decide what each student would do, how they came to that decision, what their thought processes were. Oftentimes, the first answer is they try to come up with a way that everybody goes home safe and sound and happy. Whether that be through self-sacrifice or some other means, they try to find a way where everybody lives. The problem is in this scenario, that's not an option. Self-sacrifice is not an option. And there's really nothing you can do but either ride it out or pull the lever, and either way somebody's going to die. So what do? The majority of the class will often say, I would pull the lever and go onto the side track. I know my trolley car is going to run over the one individual and that's going to kill them, but better that one should die than 5. A minority of students will often say, no. If I pull that lever, let's be honest about what we're doing. If I pull that lever, I'm actually engaging in a behavior that's going to cause the death of this other individual. It is wrong for me to take another person's life. If I ride this out, I'm just an innocent bystander here. I'm just going along for the ride. Those people will die, but it won't be by my action. And so I wouldn't pull the lever because I'm not going to kill that other person. I often bring up the idea that isn't your inaction really an action? I mean, by choosing not to do anything and just letting the trolley car ram into these 5 people and kill them, aren't you actively making a choice and engaging in a behavior of non-action that's going to result in the death of these people? And isn't there some ethical responsibility to that? So what do you do? And sometimes I'll give them an extra dimension or an extra option. I'll say, hey, suppose you're not alone in this trolley car. Suppose you've got somebody beside you and you can push them out of the trolley car. And they'll fall down into the tracks and be run over. They'll slow the wheels down just enough that you can get everybody else off the tracks. So by pushing them off the tracks, you'll be killing that person. But the other 6 people will be able to live. Usually almost nobody will take this option. Even the people that were adamant that they would pull the lever and kill the one person on the track say there's something that just seems more wrong about pushing someone, the act of actually pushing someone off the track, onto the track to stop the train. You're actually pushing someone to their death. And that just seems more wrong. And I'll come back with the retort, well, suppose I want to kill my wife and I don't want to push her off a cliff because pushing her seems more wrong. It seems like a more wrong action. So I'm going to get behind the wheel of my car and run her down. It gets to a point that we see illustrated in this example. What is the difference whether I push this person or I pull a lever or I turn a wheel? What is the ethical difference? I'm still killing one to save 5 or in this case 6. Now this is a really good example because it gets to the heart of something we face in the criminal justice system from time to time. There are situations, there are scenarios, and we'll talk about one later today, where everybody might not be able to come home safe. Everybody might not be happy at the end of the day. Sometimes you have to make the best choice you can when there's really no good options available. What this scenario has done is it's given you an opportunity to look inside yourself, to see and get a glance of how you view ethics, morality, and how you would make ethical decisions and what those would be based on. That'll become clearer as we go further into this course. Normative ethics is the branch of ethics that's really concerned with what's the right thing to do in any given situation. What's the ethical thing to do and how do we come to that decision? Remember in the beginning of this class we had the discussion about, don't we all kind of know right and wrong? Don't we all have some type of a intuition about what the right thing to do is in any given situation? Some people would argue that we don't. Ethical relativism is the idea that we don't all agree with what's right and wrong. That's really a product of who we are, how we've been brought up, what our cultural background is. All those things and much more wrap up and roll up to form how we view the world and how we view ethical and moral decisions. Cultural relativism says that, you know what, based on that, you kind of need to judge any action based on the community and the culture in which that action occurs. In other words, I can't take my morals and my values and my ethics and extend them to someone else in another community that doesn't share those values and ethics and morals. They have a different code. Let me give you a quick example to kind of illustrate this point. I live and teach in a very rural part of America. It's not uncommon in my community, in my home, to hear gunshots going off. Sometimes 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. The police don't get called. Nobody goes out in a frantic. Nobody expects something bad's going on. Somebody's probably shooting at some cans or some other target they put up. It's normal. Take that exact same action and engage in it in Chicago, New York, LA. You're going to get a very different response. And that response is going to be because they have a different set of expectations of what that gunshot means. That's built on their experiences living in the inner city, the culture of living in an inner city. Those gunshots probably mean something very different there than they would here, and vice versa. And so the response is going to be very, very different. Now, we live in a world where there's a lot of different cultures, a lot of different ethnic backgrounds, a lot of different people with a lot of different ways of looking at the world. So how can we all agree on ethics in a world that's so diverse? Well, there are some ways that we can do that. The first one is the principle of understanding. And what this basically says, maybe you should take some time to understand and get to know the ethics and morals of another culture. Maybe if you took the time to get to know them, listen to them, learn from them, maybe you'd realize we're not all that different and that there's value in the way they see the world. And so you're less likely to be prejudiced or to feel biased about how they view the world and how they make their decisions. Another one is the principle of tolerance. We need to tolerate each other, basically is what this principle says. You know, I might not agree with how this community believes, but it's not my place as a criminal justice practitioner to try to force my beliefs on them. Then there's the principle of standing up against evil. You know, there's some things in this world that are just evil. No matter what the culture, no matter what the background, they're just evil and they need to be confronted. Sexual assault is evil. I don't care what your cultural background, I don't care what your ethical foundation is, that's something evil and you should be willing to stand up against it. Murder is evil. It doesn't matter your cultural background, it doesn't matter what your belief system is. Murder is fundamentally wrong and should be confronted. Finally, there's a principle fallacy, which basically, the principle fallacy basically says, we're all wrong sometimes. We all make mistakes. And sometimes we need to give other people that same consideration, that they're going to make mistakes too, and be able to understand and take criticism and listen to others as they critique our behavior and our ethics so that we can learn from it and grow from it. There's also a form of ethics that's called ethical absolutism. Now, ethical absolutism basically says, look, forget this stuff that there's a bunch of different ways to see the world. There's not a right over here and a wrong, and it's different. Right is right and wrong's wrong. I don't care where you are. I don't care where you come from. I don't care anything about your background. What's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. What's ethical is ethical. What's unethical is unethical. What's moral is moral. What's immoral is immoral. So ethical absolutists basically say, look, there's no difference in ethics. That's just an excuse people give to engage in behavior that's unethical. They can say, well, from my background, from my culture. And that would be an ethical absolutist point of view. Now, this class is a class about ideas. And anytime we have a class about ideas and we get into discussions, there's going to be different points of view presented. And that's okay. That's what we want. We want a dialogue created. But we need to be respectful in that dialogue. We need to understand that other people have differences of opinion. They may not agree with us on everything, but we're all here to learn, and we're all here to grow, and so we're going to be respectful of each other. I'm reminded of the quote of Ronald Reagan. You know, a person that agrees with you 80% of the time isn't 20% your enemy. You know, they're still agreeing with you most of the time. There's still areas you agree on more than the things you disagree about. And we can focus on those things and make progress. So in this class, I ask that everybody take a breath, everybody be polite, everybody be considerate, and everybody be respectful in everything that we do. Let me give you another example. This example is related to the trolley car example, but it's more applicable to law enforcement and criminal justice. You are a seasoned hostage negotiator. You're the lead negotiator on the team, and you've worked for several years with this same SWAT team, and you know the SWAT team commander really well. And he's waiting for your recommendation. Now, you've been negotiating with two terrorists, primarily the one in charge. They've taken 20 hostages in a building across the street. You know through your negotiations that they've probably booby-trapped the entrances to the building. And so there's no way you're going to be able to enter the building, SWAT is, and get to the hostages before they have a good 3 to 5 minute window where they can kill quite a few of the hostages. So you know if you go in, some people are going to die. Now, you've been a hostage negotiator for a long time, and you have a lot of experience. And all your experience, all your training, all your knowledge about hostage negotiations tell you this negotiation is not going well. At any minute, probably within the next 5, this individual is probably going to start killing all the hostages. What do you do? What recommendation do you give to the SWAT commander outside? Well, let's look at our options. Option 1, I could choose to continue negotiating with this individual. Now, everything about my experience and training and knowledge about the situation tells me it's going to get bad real quick. But hey, I could be wrong. You know, anything can happen in life. And so maybe I negotiate with him, and 10 minutes later, we have a breakthrough and he releases all the hostages. We don't know, but I know that's probably not the way this is going to go. So I decide to continue negotiations. I choose that option. And 5 minutes into the negotiation further, what I feared would happen happens. And everybody in that building is killed. How will I defend my decision? To my commanding officers, to the community, to reporters, to the grieving families who lost their loved ones as a result of the decisions that I made? How do I explain to them how I came to that decision when I know that my mindset was this was going to happen? And I continued to negotiate even though I knew this was the probability, and these people died as a result. All right, let's look at my other option. Now, I could make a recommendation to the SWAT commander and tell him that this negotiation is not progressing in a good way, and that based on my experience and working with this particular hostage taker, I can tell that within the next 5 minutes there's a high probability that this individual is just going to start offing people, and we need to get in there and rescue as many hostages as we can. Now, based on that recommendation, the SWAT commander has worked with me for several years. He trusts my opinion and values what I have to say. And so based on my opinion, he decides to go in. Now remember, we know that this place is probably booby-trapped. We know that there's going to be a 3 to 5 minute window where they're going to know we're coming, and they're going to be able to kill hostages. So we know when I make this recommendation and he decides to go in, we know collectively that this is going to result in the loss of innocent lives. But we want to try to save as many of the hostages as we can. The belief is that everybody's going to die if we don't act quickly. And so we go in. How do I defend that decision later? How do I defend that to my commanders, to the community, to the grieving family members? How do I explain to them that we made a decision to go in, even though we knew doing so would result in the loss of lives? Let's say 5 people died out of the 20. We got 15 back, but 5 died. How do I explain to their families that our decision resulted in the death of their family member? There's no good option. There's no way that everybody comes out alive unless you're wrong and miraculously you continue the negotiations and they release the people, but that's a gamble. And that's a gamble that's not in your odds. And that's a gamble with people's lives. These situations you can find yourself in this field. And that's why classes like this and trainings on criminal justice ethics are so valuable and so important. Moral reasoning and ethics can really be summarized into 2 broad categories. Now, this is very broad, very vague. It's going to be a lot more complex than this, but this is first pass. And these 2 categories are consequentialist or categorical moral reasoning. A consequentialist says the moral value of any action or any behavior can be found in the consequences of that action or behavior. It's what results that determines if it was morally valuable, if it was ethically sound, if it was a good thing to do. Let's go back to the trolley car example. A consequentialist would say, it's okay to pull that lever and kill that one person because you're saving 5. The consequences, the end result of my action is these 5 people get to live and we've only lost 1 life. 1 life lost is 1 life too much, but it's better than 5. A categorical moral reasonist will say, no, that's not the way you look at it. Some things are just categorically wrong. They're wrong no matter what the scenario, no matter what the consequences are of your actions. It's all about the reason that you do it. And if it's a wrong action, it's just wrong and you shouldn't do it. So a categorical theorist would say, you shouldn't pull that lever. You should kill the 5. Because your actions of pulling that lever actively kills that person on the side. Whereas your inaction separates you ethically from it. Those people are going to die, but hey, you didn't make an action that caused that death. Now, in this class and in life, it's important from an ethical standpoint to take time to get to know yourself. Let's just be honest. We all have personal biases. We all have perspectives on the world that's built up over the years from our upbringing, our experiences, all the things that make us who we are. We need to do work to recognize those biases and those things that could become problematic as we further our education and further our careers, so that we can guard against doing things that are unethical unintentionally, so that we can guard against offending people in the community unintentionally. We really need to spend some time getting to know ourselves, being honest with ourselves, taking an honest self-view, and using that information to help guide us in making sure we are engaging in ethically and morally sound behavior when we work with the public. There's a debate in the criminal justice system, and it's a debate that's been going on for years. I don't know that it's ever going to be resolved, but we're going to discuss it here, and you're going to have an opportunity to chime in on your thoughts. The debate centers around the idea of whether we as a justice system should be more crime control or due process oriented. Now, this is a continuum, and most people wouldn't be at either end of the spectrum, but I am interested to see which end of the spectrum you fall on. Let me explain what the two categories are. First category, due process, basically says that we have to have protections in our justice system, red tape as you were, to protect individual rights, protect individual freedoms, keep people from being victimized by the government. Those protections serve not just the individual, but the community as a whole. Because these protections help make sure and ensure that the people we arrest and prosecute for crimes are actually the guilty party. And we're not taking the wrong person out of the community, taking them away from their family, taking away from the community unjustly, and allowing the real perpetrator to be out there committing crimes, doing all kinds of evil things in the community because nobody's looking for them because they think they already got their person. Crime control advocates would say, look, it's a rough world out there you're asking us to work in. And you should just trust the police some. They're professionals, they're well trained. These are professional individuals who are working hard to make our streets safer. Let's not make it harder on them to do that. If they have to live on the edge, bend a few rules, that's fine. We have to get these violent people off the streets, and we have to get them off the streets now. We admit that there's going to be some mistakes made in this type of environment, but they're going to be few and far between, and it's worth it because of the volume of people we're getting off the streets that are causing problems. Well, we've taken our first steps together on the long journey to understanding the concepts of ethics, justice, and morality. I look forward to meeting with you next week when we continue our journey in search of virtue.